Welcome to Throw Off the Lines, the podcast where we navigate life's changes, explore new horizons, and embrace the journey. I'm your host, Stephanie York, an executive coach with a passion for charting new courses on the water and in life. Ready for some total change? Let's dive in. Welcome to the episode about budgeting, and I'm always excited to jump into my topics, but today feels like a much needed topic. It's something that I talk to my clients about a lot. Most of my clients, when I work with them, probably 1 in 10 has some form of a budget, but 9 out of 10 have no budget in place whatsoever. They might have a corporate budget. They might have a marketing budget. We do talk about how can they afford to do the coaching and what are some bars that we're trying to hit financially for them for their business. But the personal budget, they cannot avoid this topic. And for some reason, lots of people struggle even addressing it. So we're going to go over those 9 reasons why people avoid it. And recognize in yourself what you might be using as a reason to avoid doing a budget. And, I want to challenge your mindset with those 9 different reasons. And one of the most misunderstood tools in personal finance is budgeting. But don't worry, we're not going to beat you over the head with spreadsheets. We're going to reframe this entirely. So let's just kind of dive in. First, I want to talk about why we hate budgeting and why 9 out of 10 people I talk to, I don't know what the statistic is necessarily nationally, but why we really just avoid it. And the truth is most people hate budgeting. And they really hate it. I've had clients, smart, really successful people, literally hide from me when I bring up the word. One of my clients, who you'd think had it all together financially, made a ton of money, was super wealthy on paper, the CEO of his corporation, but he was nearly foreclosing on a piece of land when we started talking about budgeting, and he was concerned about this. And I said, there is no reason that you should be in this position. So, we went over all of his paperwork. We found out that, he had to get his wife to agree to do some of this. They saw how much money they were spending on food every month, how much money they were allocating to just say, hey, let's go out and spend this to go to movies and go to dinners. And it was just a free-for-all. But here he was going to lose this piece of land and was almost living month to month. And one budget later, and he turned it around. We got the property out of foreclosure within that month. And then he bought another property 6 months later, built a house on that 6 months later, and he finally felt in control of his money. His money wasn't controlling him. So no matter who you are, sometimes avoiding a budget is going to really get you in trouble, and just being able to address some things right up front can give you a lot of peace of mind. So keep in mind, I'm not calling anyone without a budget a bad person, not even close. You are not lazy or bad or dumb. You, like so many others, maybe just avoiding doing it altogether, and you have feelings about it and you're stuck in it and you might not know why. And that doesn't mean you're bad with money either. That guy wasn't bad with money. He was actually worked in the financial industry, but it's a personal thing. It means you might just not have the right framing, the right mindset to get it done. And there's a couple of stats that I pulled off the internet. 68% of people say that a budget would really help them reach their goals financially. So that's 68% of people say a budget would help. But around 40% of people have never created one. And what I'm finding in the professional world, the people that come to me for coaching, about 90% of them have not done a formal budget or looked at what they're doing. So why is this disconnect? Because budgets can sound like dieting, and it feels like punishment, and it feels like restriction, and it feels like you are having to do homework for the bad teacher, but what if we reframed it and we looked at it as a tool to free you from concern, a tool to manage and control things a little bit better? And if you're not a detail-oriented person, trust me, my 5 steps I'm going to do during this podcast are incredibly simple for you to get your arms around and create a very simple plan to use this budgeting exercise. We don't need to use it as a noun. We can use budget as a verb. We can help you reframe where your money's going and have a better idea. So let's go over really quickly the 9 reasons people avoid budgets, because I want you to see yourself in whatever reason you're using to avoid doing this. Because once you know, my brain is telling me this, we can counter that. Listen to some of my other podcasts, Positive Self-Speak and Focusing on Resilience. A lot of what we do is we have little monkey brains that throw wrenches into things, and we have these negative hidden reasons we avoid budgeting. So one is perceived restriction. And that is that it feels like you're cutting yourself off from joy. Oh, I'm going to go on a budget and I'm going to have to eat out of cans at work, and people are going to see me packing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And you know what I say? So what? We need to live within our means. And if we're going out to eat every day, we're not living within our means, or, whatever. We can address that later, but you feel like you're going to cut yourself off from joy. And it is not the case. You're going to feel more joy once you've managed your money. You're not restricting yourself. You're waking up to the facts. And that's a very different thing. So there's also the fear of discovery. This is huge. This is probably the number one reason people don't do budgets when I talk to them. And that is that you are afraid of discovering you owe more than you know. We have our head in the sand, and 100%. This is why people will put budget on their action items. I'll say, where's your budget? I'll give them 5 different ways to put a budget together, and I'll say, let's just do it finally on a call. I'll sit there and we'll fill it out together. And then I'll say, this wasn't so bad. So where's your highest interest rate card? Okay, how much can we put to that? Okay, can we turn these things off? How about you substitute that for that? What about this? And then we carve it out. And it's never, sometimes it's as bad as they think it's going to be, but honestly, not knowing should be more fear-inducing for you than possibly discovering it's worse than you think. But this is real. So as you're going through this exercise, you're doing the 5 steps that I'm going to give you, and you're afraid it's going to be worse than it is, prepare yourself and say, not knowing is worse than knowing. Knowing helps me manage it. And if this is really traumatic, maybe do it with a friend. Maybe the 2 of you sit down and do it. I do it with my clients, so they're not alone. You also might have a lack of motivation. I know people that I talk to who say, I don't have enough money, I'm in debt. You know what? I'm just going to give up. I don't have anything that I need or want to save for. And that can be really disheartening. So there's no reason to start a budget because I don't have any money anyways. And I say pick a goal. And for some of my people, it's to get debt-free. Debt-free is a huge goal. And for them that are overwhelmed, instead, if they have 4 credit cards, our goal is to pay off that 1 credit card. And we find once we start paying that credit card down, we get zero balance transfer offers. We move stuff over. All of a sudden, we're saving $600, $700, $800 a month in interest. And that's huge. So pick a goal. It can be a small goal. I have somebody who needs to buy a new computer. It sounds simple and little, but we are now saving money each month towards that computer. And they'll be able to get that computer in 3 months based on the really simple budget that we put together for them. And that's going to make them feel better about it. So a third thing is a lack of motivation. No, we just did that. A negative association. Budget means struggle or I'm a failure. And it's so weird that word budget has come into people's lexicon, and they're using that term as I'm on a budget, I'm a failure, I'm poor. And instead, you've got to know that high net value, high net worth people have accountants who budget for them. So they hire somebody who tells them, no, you can't buy that property over there. No, you can't pay for that. No, we need to budget for that. You need to move this. And they have somebody who gives them often an allowance. So budgeting isn't struggle or failure. Avoiding a budget is struggle, failure, and it's a lack of knowledge. And don't associate it with being smart and fiscally responsible, and feel proud that you're on this call and you want to do a budget. Unrealistic goals, we're going to pay off all your debt this year. If you have a lot of debt and you have a less than substantial income, let's not make it like I'm going to pay everything off in 3 months and be rich. Unrealistic expectations can kill momentum. And so just get it all down on paper and then step away, come back and see what you can tackle. And then inconsistent income can make it really hard to want to do a budget. But I'm going to say gig workers or people who work on contract, you need a budget more than anybody because you can impact your budget far more than people who are on a set income. You can go get more jobs. You have flexibility. You have that mindset. A budget for a gig worker is a dream, and it really helps you understand your value. I can't say that enough. Another reason people avoid it is a lack of knowledge. You were never taught how, and I want to address that. These 5 steps are super simple. By the end of this call, with this podcast, you're going to know how to do a budget. And time and effort, life's busy, right? We can avoid anything. But I'm telling you, in an hour, 2 tops, you could have your budget set up and you could know exactly how much you need for your emergency fund and you could know exactly how much you need to pay. You can see your biggest debt and how high the interest rate is on that. And then you can set up a plan of, I'm going to dedicate extra money to that. I'm going to put $30 towards that particular one. And then we can start to look for zero interest balance transfers and things like that. And then the last one is peer pressure. You know, we have friends who spend and push us to spend. I just recently started going to lunches and brunches with a group of people, and there's a guy there who's very, very wealthy. And he loves to order bottles of wine, and he loves to order appetizers for the table, and he'll get several entrees because he thinks that everybody wants to taste them, and he always gets desserts. And some people are on budgets at these things, and it's kind of, he calls people out and he's like, why don't we just all split the bill? And he's got lots of money and he's eating a lot of stuff. And I really don't want to eat all that stuff and I don't drink. So the peer pressure that you feel when you go out amongst people, or you have friends who want to go to this restaurant and you want to go, but you don't want to push yourself. So peer pressure can make us not want to have a budget and not feel restrictive, but you have to stick up for yourself. You're doing something for yourself and you are worth the effort. And if your friends are going to push you, say to them, you know, why don't we stay in and do potluck? I'll bring a dessert. Or I'm not really going out to restaurants this month. I'm doing a restaurant hiatus and I'm saving money. I'm saving for something, or I'm paying off a high interest credit card and I'm just trying to get my arms around my funds. I don't care what they think. It doesn't matter what they think. It matters how you're taking care of yourself. And if they perceive you as not having enough money or poor or something like that, they're not friends. So you don't need to fight through all 9 of these, but listen back to them and pick the one. I think fear of discovery is the biggest one. I'm afraid of how bad it is. And if that's the case, let's move through that right now. Let's start you on this process. Just know what is blocking you, and self-awareness is the first step to overcoming it. You know, are you feeling like you're going to have to cut back on joy? Do you feel like your friends are going to judge you? Do you feel negative about the word budget? We can change it to something else, your fairy plan, or I don't care. Let's just start reframing that right away. You know, you don't have to call it a budget. Call it a spending plan, a money roadmap, your goal fund, whatever doesn't make you cringe about the idea of a budget. It doesn't have to be called that. So, I mean, you can even name your budget Nancy or Sid and say, I got to go talk to Sid, or let's Sid this out, or let's Nancy this out. Yes, it's Sid and Nancy. It's Sid Vicious. But I mean, pick a name, you know, Sally or Fred. Call it the money roadmap, the peso progress, my journey to $1 million, anything that helps you move past that mental roadblock you may be feeling. Write it up at the top of a piece of paper right now. This is Sally or Fred or my money roadmap. And getting started is half the battle. Now you've got this down on paper. You're listening to this. So instead of feeling like a budget is restrictive, think of it as the opposite. It's allowing you to know how much extra cash you have. It's not cutting, it's redirecting funds. It's not a diet or losing anything. It is looking at what you want and raising or saving the funds for that purchase or event. Get your partner involved, talk to your children about it, make it fun when everyone knows we are buying the cheap toilet paper so we can go to Disneyland. It sounds like a lot more fun. And get everybody involved. Teaching your children budgeting language is incredibly important. Showing them fiscal responsibility is incredibly important for them going forward. It's a tool they're not being taught in school or by their peers. So let's now look at how to build a budget in 5 simple steps. So let's get practical. Here's how to start step by step. Get out a piece of paper or open up a Word doc, or even better yet, use an Excel spreadsheet. I have really simple budget tools that I give to my clients, but the ones that get really stuck, I tell them, let's get out a piece of paper right now. I have a Word doc that I share with them on a Google Drive, and save this document, and then come back to it each month. And on a Word doc, I mean, if that's what you've got open, great. Let's just list out stuff. Estimate your income. Be honest and conservative. Look for all sources of income that you may have coming in. If you're getting a tax return, put in that tax return amount, whatever your salary is. What do you have on hand? What's in your bank account? What do you have to work with? We do want to have a savings goal, but what is your income? What do you have coming in every month? And that could be Social Security payments, child support, whatever your job is paying you. Let's make sure we do it post taxes, so it's the real actual amount, and be honest about it and get that down there on paper. And that's one number. Now, the other side of that is estimating your expenses. Start by estimating your fixed expenses, which are those that are the same amount each month. A mortgage, a rent payment, cell phone bill, garbage bill, a car payment, insurance, all those things, and list out each of those and how much they are. That's why an Excel spreadsheet often works better for this, but I don't care. Put it on a piece of paper. I don't care where you're doing this, but make sure you're listing them so that you can add them up. Put mortgage, an amount, car, an amount, car insurance, an amount, mortgage insurance if it's not a part of your mortgage payment, and start listing them out so that you can add them up at the bottom. And then next, identify your variable expenses, which are those with different dollar amounts each month. Groceries, eating out, gifts, clothes, gas. These are all expenses of examples of these types of expenses. So a really great way that I do that, and that I have my clients do that, is we go back through your credit card statements, and then we go back through your bank account. And we look at the last 2 or 3 months. You could look at 1 month if you want in your bank account. And then write down, I pay my cell phone this much. I pay this much for my streaming services. I pay this much for my gym. I pay this much for water delivery, whatever it is. Then go through your credit card, because your credit card is going to reflect probably more about groceries and eating out and gifts than your actual bank account will. So get everything down on there that you think is recurring and variable expenses, because we need to get a really good snapshot. If you really want to go a little bit deeper and get more serious about this, go back 3 months, see how much you spent, add it up, and then divide by 3. And that's going to be a much better understanding of your variable, the consistency of that variable on groceries, because you're taking it out over 3 months. It wasn't, hey, I had a big party and I bought a bunch of stuff, or any of those things. Now, estimate how much you spend on those and put them in here. Groceries is a line, etc. Now, looking at past credit card or bank statements obviously helps you out. And then don't forget to budget for expenses you may pay annually. If you can add that in. Say, I'm trying to think, I have a lot of web services I pay, like an annual fee for hosting my website, an annual fee for a CRM that I use. And so I could break those out if I want to. But I right now, I don't want to get too technical. If you want to do it to the nth degree, by all means, I say, if you're in here, get it all done. But if you're hesitant about a budget, this expense part is really hard. Then I want you to do the biggest, hardest, heaviest lifting, which is going to be your credit cards. And slap down all those regular expenses, but let's dig into your credit cards. Which ones do you have? And I would love to see a balance. So we're going to want a balance amount that you owe, what the interest rate is for that balance, and what your monthly minimum payment is. And we want to list them from the highest interest rate at the top all the way down to the lowest interest rate, or the highest balance to the lowest balance, whichever one you want to do. And then I recommend that you look at those payments as the minimum payments. We only want those down there because we're going to add minimum payments to your monthly expenses. And then at the bottom, we're going to compare and adjust. Okay, so now you've got all your credit cards listed out, and pause this podcast if you're doing this work. I'm here for it. I want you to know that I walk my clients through this all the time, and I look at their budgets. There is zero judgment. I will never judge somebody. Doing this is hard, and doing this is freedom. This is the way you're going to get past stuff. So now when we're comparing, here's how much I have coming in and here's how much I'm spending. You get a really clear understanding if you have anything left over at the end of the month. And if you do have anything left over at the end of the month, you need to have an emergency fund. So there's a couple of things that we want to talk about. Do you have more income than expenses? Congratulations. Do we have an emergency fund? We need to have 3 months worth of expenses in the bank. Now you have your expense total. Now you know how much you're spending every month. Multiply that by 3 and put that over on another column because we need to save towards that. If you have savings, we're not counting those as income. Subtract those savings from that emergency fund. Say you need to have $30,000 for 3 months expenses. I know that sounds like a lot. But you have $10,000 in a savings account that you could use towards that emergency fund. You need to save $20,000 to have a 3-month emergency fund. And that's really high. Maybe yours is $9,000 because you have $3,000 in expenses a month. And if you have $10,000 in a savings account, you don't need to save for your 3-month emergency fund. Great. Leave that alone. Put that over there. And I strongly recommend that you do consider that. But if we are so far underwater that you can't save for that emergency fund and you need to get your arms around really high interest rate credit cards, I'm okay with that too. I say put a little bit of extra money into an emergency fund and then start paying down that top credit card. I've got clients who have credit cards at 26.9% interest, and they've been hiding the idea that they owe a balance on that, and they're paying incredible amounts of interest, and it's just loading up. They're paying and paying and paying. And so we start to wrestle with that right away and say, okay, can we get a zero balance transfer offer? Can we double pay on that credit card this month? What do we have extra? And then, it might be time to look at what you're spending your money on and cut back. Can I cut out some streaming services? It's really, really a struggle if you have a lot of credit card debt, but not paying attention to it can cost you so much more. I had $40,000 in credit card debt at one time when I tried to start a business, and I was doing everything I could. I actually tried to start 3 businesses, and it didn't work out. And that $40,000 worth of credit card debt was really weighing on me so much. And I ended up being able to pay off a lower credit card. I only had $2,000 on it. I paid it off, and they immediately offered me a 0% balance transfer offer. And with that, I was able to transfer off of one of my higher earning credit cards and move over a bunch of the money that I owed, and I shut down the one that was at 18.9%. And then I did a negotiation on a credit card. So there's also a ton of free credit repair companies out there or services. I work with mortgage originators as clients in my coaching business, and they offer free credit repair. And there's a lot of people out there that can give you free credit repair help. And I say, do it. So what we've done so far is estimate your income, estimate your expenses, compare and adjust, work on that emergency fund, 3 months of expenses, and get your credit cards organized so that you know what you're paying towards. And then track and tweak. Step 4, track and tweak this document. Track where your money goes each month and tweak the expenses and income. Schedule a time with yourself. I don't care if it's the first of the month, the last of the month, the middle of the month, but schedule time. And go somewhere. Go to the public library and talk about it. Go to a coffee shop. If you're uncomfortable with this, go somewhere where you're dedicated to focusing on it and move your money around. Open up your bank accounts again. See if you were able to decrease expenses. Add up your expenses again. What did you get rid of? I've got people who have 7 streaming services, and they pay for cable TV, and they pay for their phone service. And if you look, sometimes your credit cards offer free streaming services, depending on the credit card that you have. And sometimes there's offers out there. There's free video streaming services like Tubi, and there's a lot that you can do. So track and tweak every month what you're doing, and then stick with it. Step number 5 is as simple as just stick with automating payments, set up goals, do automatic savings transfers, and just hang in there. You know, if you automate your savings and then forget about it, you'll be amazed how fast it grows. And, you know, managing your money so it doesn't manage you is the biggest, bravest thing you can do if you're not doing it right now. And learn why you're getting stuck. So small wins and real life tweaks. You know, you need some ideas to free up some cash without pain is rotate your streaming services every 6 months. Find a new deal. Sign up for one. Maybe, you know, Amazon Prime is offering a deal, or Apple TV. Sign up, get that deal, watch it for a short period of time, then shut it off and go to another one. And then you're not watching the same stuff and sitting around. Shop insurance with higher deductibles if your emergency fund is solid. You know, maybe change your health insurance. Maybe shop around your car insurance. Shop around your house insurance. You use curbside pickup to avoid impulse buys. If you have a really nasty habit of just impulsively buying things, go with a trusted friend, and don't buy stuff. I give myself a 48-hour window. If I really want a jacket, or I really want a pair of shoes or something, I will see it, and then I will give myself 48 hours that I have to think about whether I really want it or not. And half the time I don't go back and get it, and half the time I do, because I know I've thought it through and I'll use it. Drop your spending by 5 to 10% and celebrate with joy, not guilt. And really try to trade stuff. There's buy nothing groups on Facebook where you exchange stuff with people. Go to garage sales, go to thrift stores, sell things online in Facebook Marketplace. Use Poshmark, buy clothes and then resell them and rotate through your clothing. And then create a plan. Cook at home to save a lot of money. There's tons of videos on how to cook at home. Go to the library and check out videos online. They have free videos online. Get books, borrow books to read, take long walks after dinner, play board games and card games at night. And you can start to splurge again once your debt is paid down and your emergency fund is built. That vacation you saved for feels so much more relaxing when you earned it through savings and you didn't incur more debt to do it. So replace the negative with a positive. If you've got one of those 9 reasons that you're not doing a budget, then the secret is to sticking to your plan and kind of having some fun with it. Name your budgeting plan. And, you know, budgets are serious things and they're tough to focus on. And we are all doing so much during our days. It's a serious conversation. But like eating healthy and getting exercise and doing self-care, your financial health will catch up with you one way or another if you don't do something about it. So budgeting is self-care. And lastly, keep in mind it does not have to be a serious spreadsheet or software. You don't have to go out and get QuickBooks and do all that really detailed stuff. Get out a piece of paper, write your income on one side, your expenses on the other, and see where you come out. Look at your bank account and credit cards. What are you paying for every month? Shut off everything you can. Limit yourself to one streaming service. Videos are free on YouTube. Yeah, there's some commercials, but, you know, suck it up, buttercup. It's a great way to save money. Too often people say, I deserve this, and then they splurge, and it becomes a dopamine indulgence. And that splurge, if you do a splurge 5, 6, 7 times a week or a month, it ends up costing you so much long term. And you deserve to be financially healthy. You deserve to have this self-care in place. You deserve better from your life. And it can feel good in the moment, but in the long run, it can really hurt you. And having control over your finances feels amazing. So budgeting is not about restriction. It's about freedom. Freedom to dream and save and grow and finally stop wondering where your money went. Whether you're starting fresh or you're rebuilding after a burnout, the path starts here. You got this. So get out there, budget, do a quick 5-step piece of paper, I don't care what it is, and get your arms around your money. And take care of yourself. Reach out to me if you have questions or if you need a spreadsheet or ideas. And I am so happy to help. And I hope you have a total day. Take care. Thank you for joining me on Throw Off the Lines. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for future episodes and extras, and leave a review, share it with someone who needs a total inspiration. You can also find us on Facebook or Instagram and our Throw Off the Lines website. If you want to be a guest or have questions for the host, sign up on the website and we'll get back to you. Until next time, throw off those lines and live your best life.